So, good morning. Today is the Zayin Cheshvan, right? Tovshin Ayin Daled. I believe the last year we had was in the beginning of Elul.
16.
That's right.
Test
Zayin, that's what I said. And in fact, we are in the middle of a Maimer. We're in the middle of the Maimer of Vayikach, exactly. Pasha's Breishis. Huh? Well, I'll recap.
Okay.
We're in the Maimer of Pasha's Breishis, Mevorchem Achedesh Cheshvan, Tovshin Yud Beis. The Maimer begins on page Kuf Nun Hey, but we are actually on page Kuf Nun Vov, the second paragraph, which begins. No, we're up to V'inyan. V'inyan Nefesh. V'inyan Nefesh. I listened to the last year this morning, so.
Okay, fair enough.
And I say at the end of the year.
Was it a good year?
No, there's room for improvement, definitely.
Okay. Share said before Rosh Hashanah is different to Share said after.
Absolutely. It's a new oil, a new business, a whole
That's
thing,
right.
that's right. So the Rebbe began this Maimer by asking the following question. When Hashem created man, Hashem says, or the Torah says, Vayikach Havaye Elokim Adam Vayanicheu Began Eden of the Lashamra. Hashem took man and he placed him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to guard it. And the question the Rebbe asked was, what is the concept of working and guarding within Gan Eden? So far as working the garden, okay, we understand. What does that mean in the spiritual sense? It means to add additional light. You know, it says that La'avda is mitzvah asay and L'shamra is mitzvah leisaseh, right? La'avda is a positive action. L'shamra is a withholding position, staying away from things, right? Guarding. So it says that La'avda is it's brought to Chassidus that La'avda is the Ramach mitzvah asay and the Shamra is the Shasam mitzvah leisaseh. La'avda is a reference to the active, the positive mitzvahs, and the Shamra is a reference to the light mitzvahs leisaseh, the negative mitzvahs, or the things that we need to stay away from. So in Gan Eden, when you're in the Garden of Eden, and which denotes a holy place, a godly place, right, where there is nothing negative. So the concept of the Avda we understand, it means to draw down additional divine light into the world, as it were. But the Shamra, it seems to be inappropriate for Gan Eden. Right? There's nothing to guard against, because the Garden of Eden was all good. And in fact could not tolerate anything negative. Sorry?
They told not to eat of a tree, that's already a don't.
Okay. Let's see how the Rebbe answers it later on. The Rebbe touches on that, and not specifically with that example, but basically, ultimately, the idea is that even in Gan Eden, at a subliminal level, there is a necessity for the Shamra. In fact, as we've seen, right? Because in fact, all the Rishon did stumble, right? But the setting is, or let's put it this way: the question would be on the mitzvah of not eating from the Eis HaDaas itself. If the Gan Eden is a place where it's all good, and in fact, it doesn't tolerate anything Ra, it doesn't tolerate Ra. So where does the Shamra come into the frame? And by definition, where does the prohibition against eating from the Eis HaDaas come into frame?
You have to ask, then where does the idea of bringing more light come in? Because if it's all good, we understand light in our current concept and as refining the darkness, that's how we bring it down. But to bring more light there, it's already good.
Well, the expression that Rabbi uses is lahoisif lahamshich teisefes oir. What's going to be, for example, what's going to be the avodas Hashem when Mashiach comes? still going to serve Hashem. When we talk about adding godly energy, divine light into the world, when you talk about godly energy and divine light, there's no limit. You can keep on adding and adding, higher and higher, greater and greater. There's the idea of going from one level to a higher level. So similarly, in fact, what is Mashiach? Mashiach is the ultimate state as it was to be in plan A before the Chet Eitzadas, right? If Adam Rishon would not have sinned with the Eitzadas, what would have been in Gan Eden? The state that we will experience when Mashiach comes, right? But there will be Avodas Hashem then as well, but in a different way, in a way of adding and going higher and higher rather than refining or
I mean, it's a mute point, but the point about it is that when Mashiach comes, if there's a level of light and we can add more light, then so to speak, the level of light which exists before we add the extra light will be like darkness. Similar to how it is now, but just in a different...
Well, no.
Well,
Darkness is darkness. Darkness is the opposite of light.
well, if there's more light to be added, the previous level of light would be dark compared to it.
It will be, I wouldn't say it would be dark, it wouldn't be bright. Let's put it that way. Okay? There's additional brightness, so take a candle and the sunlight. Right? A candle gives off light, but in the sunlight it's meaningless. It'll be meaningless. That's more accurate rather than dark, which is an opposing force. So that's the question that Rebbe asks. What's the idea of the Shomra in Gan Eden to guard against what? Gan Eden is a state of pure good. Can't tolerate anything the opposite of good. So the Rebbe begins by quoting what is brought in Sefer Yetzirah, that the world, and say the Ishtalshalus, the entire order of creation, is divided into three parts, three categories, three concepts.
Yeah.
Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. Literally translated as the world, time, and life. And the Rebbe begins to explain this. The Rebbe says this is the foundation of the entire order of creation. Olam, Shana, and Nefesh. And he says like this. Olam is space. And the Rebbe goes into an analysis of space. There's physical space, which is made up of these 6 surfaces. Mizrach, Ma'ariv, Tzof, and Dorim, Maila and Mata, right? North, east, south, west, up and down. And the Rebbe says that this idea exists in all spheres of creation. In the physical sense, we have the 6 surfaces, and also the level of spirituality which is associated with those surfaces, because they are apprehended by those surfaces, they also could be defined in a more refined way, but they can also be defined as space, as the 6 surfaces.
You mean surface or direction? Like we know what to do.
The directions, well, the direction means, yeah, it's directions, but you're talking about the edges, as it were. So you have, if you take, for example, a physical room, you have the 4 walls, and then you have the ceiling and the floor. So that's what we're talking about. That defines, 6 dimensions. That defines the space in which you find yourself. That definition is not only a physical definition, it also defines the spiritual elements that are connected with those surfaces, with those dimensions. Right? The Rebbe brings a number of examples, but the Nekudas Inyan is that is what the dimensions are. Mokim, space. Right? That's Olam. Why is it called Olam? World. So the Rebbe says, because if you take, for example, Seichel, intellect. You have intellect in its pure form, and then you have the intellect as it becomes defined. We had a pretty lengthy discussion, I think, in last year about this. There are, as we know, 6 midos, right? In the 10 spheres, in the 10 divine attributes, there are 3 intellectual attributes, then there are the 6 midos. In seichel and intellect, you also have midas shebeseichel. What is the concept of midas shebeseichel? They are the defining features of seichel. Defined seichel is midas shebeseichel. You have the pure intellect, and you have the intellect as it is defined. This could be in a multitude of ways.
As it is defined, what do you mean as it is defined?
For example, if we take the starkest example, or a very stark example. Take Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel. Every concept, or the concepts in which, for example, Beis Shammai and Beis Hillel argue or disagree about, the seichel could be noite klapi chesed, the seichel could lean towards chesed, or it could lean towards gevura. They're arguing about the same idea, right? Beis Hillel concludes chesed, Beis Shammai concludes gevura. That's the conclusion. So the seichel, in its purest form, could tolerate all sorts of variables, right? Those variables are the vav ketzavis, the 6 dimensions, as it were, the 6 surfaces that define seichel. Seichel, the nekudas of seichel, in its purest form, could go in any direction. Defined seichel, on the one hand, it clarifies the seichel, but on the other hand, it also conceals on the nekuda, on the point, on the essence of the seichel, on the essence of the intellect, which is the driver of all these variables, right? Hence, says the Rebbe, it's called olam. That's why it's called olam, because olam is a lashon helen v'hester, as the Alter Rebbe says in Lukas Deira. Olam is from the expression of helen, concealment. So the vav ketzavis, on the one hand, they define, right? But that definition means it blocks out what's behind.
Is the Chochmah and Bina you're talking about, so to speak? Because they're both within Seichel. Chochmah is inclusive, with no detail, and Bina is the
He's talking. The terminology he uses over here is the nekudas seichel, which is probably, I believe, what he's referring to is even beyond pure seichel, pure intellect, without any definition. Right? Goes through the process, as you say, Chochmah, Bina, and Das, but then you still have the defining features, even more defining features within Chochmah, which is the Vav Ketzavis, the Vav Midas, the Midas Shabbat, which is actually defined Seichel. What does that do? It defines it, but that definition, by definition, conceals what is beyond that definition, which is the Nekudas HaSeichel. That's why it's called Olam. But the point, the bottom line is, Olam refers to definition, as we know it. Defined, everything has its place. Mizrach, Ma'ariv, Tzof, and Dorim, it's, as it were, if you will, the lowest level. Okay? Then you have the highest level, which is Nefesh. That's what we're going to learn about now, which is that which is completely beyond definition. Not even as a generality from which the details follow. And then the Rebbe is going to go into Shana, which is time, and that is the connector between beyond definition, completely beyond definition, and actual definition. This is the structure of what the Rebbe is putting together. This is Olam Shana Nefesh. So, Olam is complete definition, full definition. Right? The lowest. Now we're going to go to Nefesh, which is the highest. That's where we're up to page Kuf Nun Vav at the paragraph of Inyan. The Inyan Nefesh. What is the idea of Nefesh? It is the point of light and the life force, the energy, which is beyond the concept of details. What does it mean it's beyond the concept of details? It is even beyond being a generality for the details. In other words, details come from a generality, right? You have the general state of something, and then you have how that klal, that general state, comes into details. So usually, the details, at the closest point, the details follow from the generality, as we say in davening, in the Bishmol Eimer, klal uprat, right? You have the klal, and then you have the prat. You have the general state, and then you have the details. They follow from the details. when we talk about nefesh, we're not talking about a state of klal as it is relative to the prat. We're talking about such a state which is completely beyond the details, not even as a klal, not even as a source, as it were, from which the details follow on from. Vahainu, he explains. Although all the details come and are drawn from the point, nevertheless, the point is not in the mode of a generality towards or relative to the details. Let's use a very, very maybe stark example, as it were, but nonetheless it highlights the point. Take, for example, the Eibishter. The Eibishter, HaKadosh Baruch Hashem, is the source of life for everything, right? Godliness, God and godliness, the creator of the world. There's a lashon in Chassidus. It's probably not a very accurate description. It's probably overkill, if you will. But nonetheless, it highlights the point. Loi zehu inyan ha'elakus shemimenu nishava elimus. It's not. You can't define godliness that godliness is something from which worlds are created. Although it's true that worlds are created from godliness, but godliness is so far beyond the capabilities of Getlachkeit, or what God and godliness is really. Is so much greater than Bria, that even though Bria comes from God, from Getlachkeit, right, from the Eibishter, nonetheless he's a lot. He's way beyond all that, right? Similarly, al derech zeh. So then you take, for example, Malchus Atzilus, or if you take, for example, the Koyach Eliki, the particular godly life force, which gives life to a particular creature, right? So the relationship between the created being and the particular godly life force that gives it life is a much closer one than, for example, the created being and the very essence of Hashem, in this sense. Because the very essence of Hashem is Kol Yochel, way beyond creation, things that we can't even imagine, right? Things that don't exist in our frame of reference. So that's, although it comes from it, but you can't say that it is a klal to the prat. You can't say that it's a generality from which the details follow, although the details do follow from it, right? Because you're talking about a stage and a place and a domain which is way removed from the actual detail. Similarly here, when we talk about nefesh, we're not talking about the level of nefesh, of divine energy, of chayes, of oir, which is the klal to the prat that follows, the generality from which the detail follows, that close relationship. We're talking about what? We're talking about the nekudas ha'oir, the very essential point of light. Right? So he says like this, Mikol Mokem. So in other words, again, although all the details follow from this point, we're not talking about a point which is in the mode of a klal, of a generality to the details. The inyan klal, when you say klal, it means it is a generality, it's an all-encompassing, it's a state of all-encompassing, which is a klal, a generality for the details. The klal will possess, the generality will possess all that is later fleshed out in detail. So in other words, when you say klal and prat, what is the klal and what is the prat? The prat is the klal fleshed out. That's what it is. Right? Vahainu, which means that without the details, there is no klal. The klal does not possess, when you say klal and prat, the klal, the generality, doesn't possess anything other than what? Than the details in a general form. Because when you say klal prat, the whole idea, the whole being of this generality is the fact that it is a generality for the details that come from it. And therefore, therefore what is possessed within the klal, the generality, is only that which is later fleshed out in detail. When we talk about the essential point of the light and the energy, it is a self-contained, independent existence, irrespective of the details that follow from it. And it's not in the mode of a generality. The relationship between it and the details that come from it is not like that of a klal to the prat, the generality to the details. Ella. But on the other hand, those details do follow from it. It's just that automatically, almost on its own, this klal, this generality will stem from it, and ultimately the details will come from that klal, from the generality that stems from it in an automatic way. So first, the generality will come from it, and then the details will come from it. But the energy itself, this nekuda, this point that we're talking about, is a stand-alone, completely independent existence, and its relationship to the details is a completely removed one. Let me just finish the paragraph. First, what comes from it is this general life force, this general energy. Then, what follows from that is chayes prati, a detailed life force and energy relating to specific entities and creatures, and then v'keches pratim, and then detailed faculties and abilities.
Okay, so at the risk of being ignorant, and forgive me guys, just trying to get the thread from the beginning again. So we said that we're trying to just give us a quick thread.
The thread is like this. The Rebbe asked the question. It says in the pasuk, "Vayenecheyu Hashem Elokim Gan Eden Lav L'Shomro." When God created man, He placed him in Gan Eden to keep the Gan Eden, to work the Gan Eden, and to keep the Gan Eden. The Rebbe asked, "What is the concept of L'Shomra in Gan Eden?"
Okay.
Gan Eden is all good.
Yeah.
It seems that the only thing you can do in Gan Eden is to make it more beautiful, to enhance it, to guard it against what?
So
That was the question.
So
the Rebbe says, to understand this, we first have to preface the idea of Eila Shalom Nefesh.
Three ideas.
So he starts, which is Sefer Yitzira, right? The beginning, he says the foundation of all of Ishtalshalos, of all of the order of creation is Olam Shana Nefesh, world, time, and life.
Those are the three components which
Make
allow
up,
that, as you say, the Ishtalshalos to take place.
Those are the three components that make up the entire Seder Ishtalshalos.
Olam,
Shana, and Nefesh.
Right.
The whole Seder Ishtalshalos is founded and operates on the basis of these
those three categories.
these three concepts. And the Rebbe starts defining it. Starting from Olam. Olam is space. In short, the Rebbe, we didn't get into it yet, but basically you're talking about two extremes and something that combines the two. Olam being the lowest extremity, the lowest of all, things as they are in their most defined state.
Sorry, again, when you say Seder Hishtalshalos, when we say space, are we talking about the end product or within the framework at the beginning? I mean,
in all of Ishtalshalos, so that's what I've explained, that in all of Ishtalshalos, you will find space. You have physical space as we know it,
right.
But then you have what's called spiritual space. For example, he says, take, for example, the idea of hearing, listening. So we have the power to hear in the physical sense, right? We hear physical sound, but we also know that neshama, the way it is lamaila, as it is above, also hears. Or the soul, even though it's down here, hears, for example, the kruzim, the baskel that comes out. What is it? What's the idea of hearing spiritually? We don't know what it means. But just like when we hear, it has some kind of an effect on us, right? Whatever, depending on what we hear, right? So too the neshama hears. The neshama also sees. There is spiritual sight. Right? Seeing godliness. We don't know what that is because once the neshama comes into the physical body, it experiences those things in a physical way. But those things also exist in the spiritual form. So that's the idea of what? Olam, space, right?
Yeah.
So there's the godly aspects of Seder Ishtalshalos that are connected to Zman, which are defined by Zman and therefore are within the confines of Zman.
Right.
That's Olam. That's the lowest extremity.
Right.
It's the definition. Then you have nefesh, as the Rebbe explains now. Nefesh is the highest. It's the state. It's the first point where nothing is. It's not defined. Right? It's beyond definition. But then you need something that connects the two, and that is the function of time, of zman, as he's going to explain in the Avrotz V'Shev, which is going to be in the next section. And those are the building blocks. Not the building blocks. This is basically the Olam Shana Nefesh are the foundations. These three components, which make the entire Seder Shtalshelus the function to tick exactly.
Okay.
The functioning of Seder Shtalshelus. And with that, the Rebbe is going to go to explain what's the idea of the Shamra in Gan Eden. That's the basic construct.